3.5 years professionalizing the SEO team here, making sure that in the end we grew basically from one person to 4 FTE now, 5 FTE including myself. I like skydiving, and I hope to be doing that again this year. And I also like coding in my free time, solving some puzzles, solving some stuff that's broken at home.
So you like skydiving?
Yeah.
So how many times have you skydove?
75 times.
Yeah. Yeah. About 75 times. I'd have to check my logbook, but it's around 75.
Isn't that 100? Thank you.
No. Usually that's 251. So now let's get it. What will we talk about today? This is what you will walk away with. What is Scrum? What is agile? It's just a methodology. It's just something that you can use to do your teamwork within. Not per se something that will help you to deliver more things, but as a team it helps you to organize yourselves better. I'll be talking about some tools that we're using in our SEO team, and really about how to apply them from a practical point of view. So it's not only the theory behind it. However, I will start with the theory because that is important to understand before we really dig into the tools. Tools will only do so much for you, right? They will not bring in the magic themselves. These are some of the topics that we will actually touch on during the next half an hour. An important one will be story points. Doesn't matter if you don't really get what that is about. I can always, in the Q&A, explain a little bit more about this. We'll go into tools like Right Toggle and Todoist that we use within the team to manage ourselves, and we'll talk a lot about the roles within Scrum that will help you actually to get to the execution of this. So the one thing I won't tell you is how to throw a party. You got to do that one yourself at the end. But if you do this really well, then at least every 2 weeks, or if your sprint is going to be once every week, or maybe once every 3 weeks, you will actually be able to celebrate something every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever framework you choose, time you choose. Because one of the most important things about the whole Scrum methodology is that you work from a beginning to an end every so many weeks. And this is something that you really miss in normal project management. Kind of wanted to say, let's get this one out of the way and let's really dig in. I won't talk about what, it was very, very fitting with Staples as well. It's the best one I could find. So I won't really talk about what old school project management is versus what is agile. I don't have enough time to really go into that much depth. So I will just really briefly and shortly try to say what is negative about project management and what is really good about Scrum methodology and how that will enable you to be more agile. What do we mean with working agile? Quicker, faster, more efficient, more to the point, less in project management documents, more in actions and things that you want to do. It's basically you're saying you're more getting things done methodology mindset. So what do you face when you're doing a standard project? Yeah, you write a project plan. You do all the planning that goes around this. You have to think months ahead very often. After you've kind of come to an agreement there with a lot of talking, you kind of start working, but you're already like a couple of weeks down the line. You haven't done anything yet, but you've already invested money. You've already invested a lot of time. You're talking a lot, you're thinking a lot, but you're not doing anything. Once you start doing, there will be some alignment talks when you're working, but not that much, right? Maybe once a week, maybe you have multiple projects going on. It's not really structured or anything. It kind of depends on the project manager on how often he kind of brings you together, and there's no really rules to that part. After weeks or months of hard work, everybody's done, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, I thought we were supposed to deliver this. No, we were supposed to deliver that. But I need this, and now I cannot work on that. You have a lot of misalignment. You can't plan ad hoc, but it will be there at certain points. It's really difficult to really take into consideration everything that is going to happen in the future. But a project plan kind of forces you to do that. But if you think about it, it's kind of impossible to plan for all that stuff. The most important part of this is one of the things that I missed really in this area is it's not really a team effort. You kind of come together in the beginning, You go back to what you need to do, what you're supposed to deliver. You don't really talk, so a bit of a low team effort and low team spirit as well. Whereas when you go into more or less like the Scrum methodology, it's basically the other way around. Not exactly, but it's basically the other way around. So you still need to have some sort of project plan. You need to know a little bit of why you're going to do something. So you as a product owner, and I'll explain later what that means, will know this in advance of when the team actually starts to work on this. But instead of writing a project plan, you write down the first things that you as a team need to actually start doing. So you really make it as small and as practical as possible. And I will actually show examples of how we do this later on in the presentation.
Can I ask a question, Michel?
Yes.
You use the words Scrum and Agile a bit intermittent. You use them.
Sure.
So what's the difference between Scrum and Agile?
Scrum is the framework that allows you to work more agile.
Okay.
So, and I will have a nice slide that explains you exactly what Scrum means. But agile is how you would like to work, fast, and in a getting things done mentality, task-based, continuously delivering. Scrum is one of the ways how you can do this, like within a boxed framework. And Scrum gives you tools to do this, but I will absolutely get to this with roles, responsibilities, and methodologies that you have to go through. And one of the things that actually is very important in Scrum is continuous communication, which is something that is not per se standardized in a standard project format. And I'm not saying that this is absolutely the way standard products are doing. I'm pretty sure that there's some project managers in here that are not 100% in alignment with me, but like I said, I can't go too deep in everything, otherwise I'll be spending a half an hour just explaining the differences. But I want to make it practical as soon as possible. You have weekly backlog refinements, and I will again explain what this means. It basically comes down to the fact that you as a team have a look at all the tasks that you are going to do next week, not next month, but everybody is involved in continuously seeing what other people within that small group of people are doing. And every other week you have a completion. And this is different than a milestone that you have in a project plan. Because a milestone, yes, it's something that you work towards, but it's not per se like that you've completed something. And it is a bit vague. It is very depending on how you as your team really interpret things. But the thing is, your sprint is you very often see these whiteboards where you have these post-its on, and you go from left to right, and you really see that everything goes from to do, to doing, to eventually a done area on the whiteboard. So really, you can physically see we've completed something, and this is where the project manager comes in, because you can say this is what we agreed on. We do this within 2 weeks in our case, and now it's actually done. Now we can move to the next phase. And you can already see how that helps me as product owner to plan things for the next week's sprint, because you get a very much clarity on the things that you will very much expect to have done in the next 2 weeks. So this is a very important one. You have continuous alignment within your team. So when I speak to people outside of my team, I know if things are going to be done in the next 2 weeks or not because of reasons. And then it's much easier to make promises for delivery also within larger projects. But also as a team together, because you make the task so small, and you're not really talking about the big picture, but continuously about these small getting things done tasks. The dependencies and all that stuff is so easy to manage for yourself as a product owner. First, let me explain exactly what it is. It is that framework that I just explained. And again, the presentation will be made available. You can download it, save it, read through it. There's some slides in here that have a bit of text on it, so that you can also nicely read through that over time. But it really helps you initially from a development point of view to build complex products. Like you can actually quite easily exchange the word products for projects and then write everything down from a project perspective instead of I need to develop this front-end system. It's about, okay, we need to do this bit of research, or we need to discuss this before before we can go into the next. You really write down every single thing that you need to do so that you get a very clear vision on everything that needs to be done. And like I said, it all comes back to the two things all the time. It's about talking with the people that are relevant to you within your team, making sure that you allow them to do that. And this is where the tools come in handy. And not talking so much about what you want to achieve, but actually going through the steps that you need to do to get to the point of what you need to achieve. If you visualize that, this is more or less what it looks like. These are all the elements within the Scrum methodology that you have to apply to your team and go through in order for it to work. And these elements, they enable you actually to be so much more efficient in the end than when you're just working and catching up every once in a while and working again. I will go through them, almost all of them individually now, but it comes down to the fact that you gather all the tasks here. As a product owner, you decide which ones are the most important ones and which ones are the least important ones, because it's your role as a product owner to have a vision, to have an idea, to be talking to, in my case, all the countries and knowing what is their priorities. That's why I have KPIs with all these countries. I know what's important for them, or in milestones even with them. So I can then say, okay, now we need to work on this, otherwise we can't deliver this milestone. So then I will prioritize it higher. As a team, we will then have a 2-hour session where we will go through on the Monday every 2 weeks, and we will basically get the top X amount of tasks. That goes then into the sprint backlog, which is the I need to do, we are doing, and done whiteboard. We then meet every day for about 15 minutes at the beginning of the day. Just talk about how did it go yesterday, what are you expecting to work on today, and are you actually, do you find any problems in this? Problems can be unforeseen ad hoc things that all of a sudden popped up on your radar. The country can ask Desmond questions instead of going via me, which is completely fine. But because we agreed to a certain amount of tasks in the next 2 weeks, that will have an impact on his workload, because you make the sprint exactly fitting to what your workload is for the 2 weeks. So if you're taking a day off, you take that into account. So you know exactly, oh, you can do 15 tasks. If something else comes in, something has to go off, because he doesn't magically get more time. Or it's my job then to go talk to the person who requested the ad hoc ask, to say, okay, how important is it? Well, we have something else for you on the list. Is it more important than that? So we take that off and then instead do this. So it opens up that discussion, right? It makes it very visible about what you are working on and what you want to deliver. Most of the time you just hear everything is fine, we're continuing to work, or I'm working on this analysis today, or I'm expecting to get the content for Italy live today, and stuff like that. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, we talk it through. We kind of combine it out of product practicality. We combine these two. We combine the sprint review with the sprint planning, just so that we can do it more efficient for ourselves. And I kind of get a bit of an overview of all the analysis that have been done by, for example, Sticky Eyes, so that when on Tuesday or Wednesday I have a meeting with, let's say, Germany, I can then do the presentation myself about that analysis. If it needs more time than 15 minutes, we usually schedule a separate session for that, because otherwise it takes the focus out of the meeting, because the meeting is really about first hour sprint review, second hour sprint planning for the next 2 weeks. So that's kind of very high over what this looks like. You can find all this information also on scrum.org. Scrumguide.org also has it. It's all free. It's open source, you could say. When you start that sprint planning, you move the tasks actually onto your whiteboard. You're kind of committing to delivering something as a team, as an individual. You're part of that team. You're saying like, okay, in the next 2 weeks, I am going to be in the office for the whole 2 weeks, and in that time, I'm expecting that I can do this. What you will see is, in for this, we use something that we call story point. I'll get to that in a second. What you will see is, after a certain time, within your team, you're going to recognize how many points as a team you can do, how much effort as a team you can spend on your 2 weeks' work. For my team, that is roughly 200 points. For another team, it might be 500, and for another team, it might be 100. But there is a certain consistency in that within the team. So for you as a product owner, if somebody then takes a week off, you know what to expect. Or if you get an additional resource, or if a country asks for more resources, I can immediately say that means so many points, that's about so many % of everything I have. Wait a minute, the contract value of a ticket is this much. I can calculate within 2 seconds how much money that will cost if we need to add 10%, 15%, or 20% more resources based on how we work here. It is very important also then during the sprint, if you don't think that you're going to make every single task, that you update the group, because the group can actually help, because somebody else might have a little bit of extra time because he was actually faster than he thought he would be, or she thought she would be. So it's a group effort that you work on. It's also very important to understand. You kind of help each other, like let's say we put in the analysis for facility solutions, and Sticky Eyes was actually doing the first part, but then we actually got an additional resources in the form of Sander, and we were actually able to just simply give some of those points to Sander. Of course, it was very new for him, so very big in comparison to how much points Sticky Eyes would put onto this, but it would make it very handy for us, because now Sticky Eyes could spend those points, the time, the effort on something else that was more complex, and Sander could take over this quite easily. You know, you can shift and share within your team. I kind of went through this in the previous slide, but again, you can even see in this simple image, there's much more detail here than the lower you go, and that's the whole idea of the product backlog. Because when you're doing projects, especially, I think we have about 25 projects going on at the same time at all times, if not more. You continuously also talk with other people. You get ideas. Within the team, you get ideas. And 9 out of 10 times, you're probably emailing them between each other, like, oh, hey, I have this idea. What do we do with this? Or we should talk with that person. Or when are we going to work on this project? It's actually very handy to just have one place where everything goes in. Like if it's me, if it's Desmond, if it's Michael at Sticky Eye, technically even if it's Brian, you know, everybody can just put things in here. Then we can talk about it later. And I will show you when we go into Rive what that kind of looks like. When people put ideas into the backlog, then it's up to me to make them very clear to the team. And it means that I sometimes have to ask, yes, question.
Yeah, you have said a couple of times Sticky Eyes, but I don't know if I'm the only person that is not familiar with that term. But I don't
Good
know
question. Sticky Eyes is our SEO agency.
Oh, so, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's our SEO agency, so it's our partner. It's our partner.
Okay.
Yes, so we work with them together. So my team more or less is made up of Desmond, myself, and 3 FTE at Sticky Eyes. So that's how it works.
Okay, now.
That's actually a good question. Kind of assumes that everybody knew, but of course nobody has to know that. So yeah, I'm referring to other people within my team. So yeah, I get to decide what is important and what is not important over time. And the closer we get to the new sprint, the more I will have this list complete to what we're actually going to do in the next 2 weeks. And this actually helps Desmond to actually plan, okay, I see that we're very likely going to require some Italian writers or some keyword research for Germany. So they can already go ahead and reserve some of that capacity internally at their own end to to get those translators made available. It also helps us to make that sprint planning a little bit more efficient, because Desmond can read it on Friday in the afternoon already, like, oh, I'm expecting this. Wait a minute, Michel forgot that I have a dependency on XYZ, which is not in here. So he can already add that. And then on Monday, we can have a very clear team conversation during that sprint planning about this is the priority that I'm putting in there, but wait a minute, you forgot to think about this, because it's also not reasonable to think that one person will know everything at all times. It makes sense to think about it as a group, and it's not that you're giving away your authority. No, it's also not really much that you're sharing it, but it's like you treat each other as equal so that you can have like conversation, but you're still guiding that conversation as product owner. You're still telling more or less the team, like, this is what we're going to do, and then maybe on 1 or 5 items out of the 35 or 40 or 45 that are in there, you have some conversation back and forth. It also brings a lot of clarity to have when you have that sprint planning. I'll get the backlog refinement in a second. The sprint planning brings a lot of clarity because every 2 weeks you force yourself as a team to talk about what are we going to work on the next 2 weeks. So everybody in the team is constantly aware of what is going on at all times. And it's possible that we are working on 2 tasks from project A and 5 tasks from project C and maybe 20 tasks from project B, and maybe one person is only working on project A, but at least he or she is aware of what is the team doing about project B and C. And very often, actually, one of us comes up with an idea that helps the other that's working on tasks from the other project, or that can say, oh, wait a minute, I actually have the template that I use that you could use for this. So you, again, because you force yourself, you enable the team to talk on a regular basis and to have a little bit of an in-depth conversation about what you're working on. You're creating awareness, and you're also helping each other to bring more efficiency where that's possible. You can even work together on certain tasks where you haven't thought about up front, you know? It's like this, yeah, you kind of force everybody to talk, and that is so helpful. I just quickly got over the backlog refinement, and it kind of relates to this. Because like I said, this backlog is never, ever complete. It is your to-do list, and sometimes things always stay here. They move up, and they go back down again. Because something that is on a backlog doesn't have to be a priority at all times. It can be something that you want to do in the future. It can be that there's a project that you seriously want to kick off, that you have really, really well-defined ideas about, but somehow it just can't be prioritized because you're continuously having to do other things if you're under-resourced, for example, which obviously happens. So you keep pushing things that actually could be very interesting down, but it also shows you to the business, like, okay, if you give me more resources, like, look at everything that we can do. You know, I could double my time starting tomorrow. If we hire somebody tomorrow, these are the things that he or she will be working on immediately. So you really make it very easy to show that stuff as well. It really helps you. What you do with backlog refinement is you more or less as a team go into this backlog, and let's say Desmond created a couple of tasks in here, that he goes back in there and he reviews that task himself. But Michael from Sticky Eyes could also go into that task and say, it's not 100% clear what you want to do with this. Could you please make this and this a little bit more clear? And it takes you about an hour a week. It's not that much, maybe half an hour if you do that. It is really, and it brings so much clarity again to everything that we want to achieve. So because you're continuously talking about the things you do, the actions that you're going to work on, and the deliverables that you have for this sprint. So again, 2 items that continuously come back within this Scrum framework. It's communication, and then it's getting things done. There are many tools out there that you can use to help you to do task management too. Because again, I'm talking about task management, not about project management. Because project management is something that is, somebody talks about the longer term, the whole project, you know, let's say the hierarchy overhaul. That's Adriana, her job. She talks about the whole hierarchy overhaul. But within that, we have deliverables. So I like to talk about tasks. What do we have to deliver for that project to be continuing to go forward? We use Bright for this. Some people use Jira for this, especially if you're developing. If you're a developer, you tend to use Jira because it's just Jira, however you want to say it. But that's a really developer-focused one. Rike is a little bit different. Then you have some personal planning to do also, because you have to manage your own tasks, everything that you need to do. And then as a team, it is really nice to know what the team has been up to. So actively managing the things your team needs to do and is going to do, including the backlog and everything. Budget, you can put everything in there, it's crazy. To do it, personal task management, so you kind of port the tasks into there, you put your meetings in there, so you have like a checklist for the day, so you can prioritize your day. It's really nice to have done that before you have the 15-minute catch-up with the team, because you can basically decide for yourself what is your most important thing to do today, and then tell that to the team. And then somebody can say, no, wait a minute, I'm not done with this yet, better do that tomorrow. And it really helps that conversation. And then with Toggle, what we do is we look at, okay, how much time did we actually spend on all these projects? Not specifically on tasks, but more projects. Because one thing that you kind of actually don't oversee that well anymore is the full scope of the project in the end. But this is definitely something you want to learn. You want to learn, okay, over the longer period of time, how much time did we spend on this project? How much time did we spend on this project? Was it worth it? So that if something like that project comes back, how many hours did we spend on it? Can I make a better estimation for the next one, et cetera, et cetera. From a communication point of view, most of you probably heard about Slack. Allows you to do, it's basically Jabber on steroids. And with an actual 2019 interface. So that is very nice. And obviously you have still Outlook. One thing to note is I'm curious to know, but probably most of you talk via Outlook about the things you're doing, the things you're working on, the projects you're working on, the tasks you're doing, the conversations you're having, and even getting approvals in there. How easy is it to find things back? Probably not that easy. You have to drag everything in folders and manage all this enormous tree of folders on the left side of your screen. We do 90% of that in Write, and maybe I have 10 emails a day. And because everything is in Write that we talk about, because the only thing that matters for us as a team is getting things done. It is that I have to communicate with the outside world, but within the team, but I don't even think we email Desmond, do we? We basically send no emails between each other and between sticky eyes. Only the contract has gone through Outlook. The rest always in Write. And the things that you're talking about on a day-to-day basis, it's much faster and quicker to just do that via Jabber or Slack. The one thing that Slack has is really nice is they have channels, so you can more or less mimic your projects that you're working in, and then you can have conversations in there that are open to everybody. It's really nice. So let's get into the nitty-gritty.
The most like slide was the one falling apart.
Well, I can put it back up if people want to make some. I need to now put my screen on the other screen. There we go. Is this visible to everybody? Okay, it doesn't really need to be readable. First, let me show you quickly. So this is actually what we are working in. And I have no secret, but I can't actually read it myself. I will be standing.
This is not free software?
No, it is free, but if you want like the cool features, you got to pay for it. But it's absolutely worth it. And I will just walk you through it now. Am I standing in the way of anybody here, or no? Right. First, let me quickly show you what it means if you started actually using our Scrum methodology. So we went from email management to task management to just in here, just purely basic task management, not the Scrum Framework or anything on top of that. And that was more or less what happened here in the beginning of 2017. You can see us working here. We did some stuff. We increased the amount of tasks that we did, and that's the green stuff. But when we started Scrum, you can see how continuous we are able to deliver tasks. And productivity is not about the amount of tasks that you're doing, right? That's absolutely something that is not reflected properly in this tool. Because this tool is definitely task-based, but in a proper Scrum methodology, again, you talk about points that you're doing. Let me explain that. When you're talking about a workload. Usually what you do is you estimate this takes me about 4 hours, it takes me about 6 hours. But it actually is very, very difficult to do because, you know, sometimes you don't have all the information you need already in order to do that task. And when you're actually working on it, you're like, oh, damn it, this task is so much bigger than I thought. But then what you do is you plan 40 hours completely full, or maybe 30 out of the 40 hours you completely booked, and then you're going to overspend so much time on this task, and another task is underspent. So that's not a good measurement value. What you tend to do is you use the story point. So in a story point, you say it's going, and the fun thing about story points is you can actually decide yourself what it means to you as a team, because it doesn't, unless the company has one view of it, it doesn't make sense to come to, for example, Adriana also uses it in her team, but it doesn't make sense for me and my team to compare, oh, you did 100 story points, well, we did 200 story points, so we are twice as efficient. No, because within their team, they have a different idea of what 1 point is worth. So it uses the Fibonacci model. So it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 5, etc., etc. Maximum in our team is 21. 21 means a couple of days of work, like at least a minimum of 3 days. Then 13 is roughly a day of work, like it can be 6 hours, it can be 8 hours, but it can also be 10 or 11 hours. And then, you know, you go down. So you have more of a bit of a range. And then when you want to do the math over time and you want to look at the trends over time, it's much easier if everything just has one number instead of you continuously saying, well, I'm either going to take 4 hours or I'm going to take 6 hours for this. You know, it's nice to have just one number that everybody knows, oh, this is going to take him about 5 story points, fine. Then it's also very easy for me to say if something else comes in, okay, that's about 5 story points, and I need to take out 5 story points. I can take out 2 tasks that make up 5 story points, or I can take out 1 task that has maybe a little bit more just to make up for it. So it's really something you have to experience to get an understanding of it. It's difficult to explain this part of it, but yes, that's how you really look at efficiency of your team. Are we consistently ticking off the same amount of effort during one sprint? And if I add more resources to it, is everybody as efficient as each other? You know, those things. I think the easiest thing to do is just to go in here and take, let's say, we are now in sprint 30. No, wait, let me just show you the backlog first. Here's the backlog. This is a prioritized backlog. And what we do is we put all the things that we're thinking about in here. This is all the stuff that we still want to do at some point. And some of this is part of a project, some of it is project B, and some of it is project C again. It doesn't really matter what it's part of, because when you open up something, this one actually is completed, but when you open it up, there's nothing in there, of course, when you show it on the live screen. Let me just pull something up from up here. Yeah. So what we do is we tag it with the country so that also in an overview like this, we see what the country is that we need to work on. Is it something for EU, something for IT, or for Spain, or for Germany even? What is the project? And of course, like a proper enterprise, we have our short names for all the projects. And then actually a really brief description of what the task is. Then you get to ask somebody who's going to own the task. You get to put a description in here, and sometimes it's more written down description. Sometimes it's more about, okay, these are the deliverables or the steps that you have to go through to do it. And this, for example, needs to be a little bit more clear to be really added. But if you look at, for example, here in the what we actually doing for this sprint, if you look at this one, you can see that we have much more context around the task, so that the person who we agreed that will pick it up actually kind of knows what to do, what to work on, and yeah, it just brings so much clarity because you try to really make this task as small as possible. You know, if you continuously have tasks, this is very coincidentally one of the bigger tasks that we're doing. Usually we try, if it's a 13, we try to break it up already, because if it's the 13 pointer, you can probably break it up into 2 of 5 and 1 of 3. tasks. And that is so much easier to manage when it's smaller tasks because, it might be like 3 hours of work or 4 hours of work. And then it's much more certain that you can commit to getting that done. Whereas when it's something that's more than 8 hours of work, there's probably already a lot of stuff that you're taking into account that is going to be a really big task. So it's very likely that you're going to find things that you don't really know yet. So the task probably is, let me put it this way, it's more likely that the task actually is even bigger than 13 points because you give it 13 points because you kind of don't know really that well. You're building in some safety time. This is also, like I said, our Scrum board. And you can see it in here as well. You have like some sort of to do, in progress, waiting for, completed. And actually, this is one of the reasons why you want to pay for it, because let's say if you open up a task like this, we can position it. If maybe we already know we're not going to finish this task, we can mark it as not finished. Or actually, matter of fact, the project gets stopped, discarded, or some other reason. You can just mark this where it is in the progress. So also for me as a product owner, during the 2 weeks, I really get a good view of where everything is. I get to review things. Let's say if it's Wednesday in the second week of the sprint, and this happens quite a lot, unfortunately, but it's the Wednesday, the second week of the sprint, and 2/3 of the tasks are still in progress. Then I'm going to be like, are we really going to finish all of this, or do I have to start calling people internationally and say we're not going to be able to deliver this analysis or those results or that dashboard, whatever, or implementation of you name it. The fun part is that I've also learned over time that, like in development, when you work Scrum, what you have a graph that has a burn down chart, and what they also want to do is they want to measure the velocity of the team within that sprint. And velocity is, let's say we mark this one as completed. That means that, like, in total for this sprint we might have 200 points, and then there will be a burn down graph, which be literally from left to bottom. Like we now have 200 points open, and now we have 0 points open. 0 points open means completed the sprint. Let's say on Monday we're already completing 5 tasks that are 13 points. Then we have like what, 75-ish kind of points already done. But the graph in the middle takes more an average per day, so you're actually going much faster than what you're expecting to go. That gives me an idea of resource-wise, we should have probably planned this a little bit different. You want to go like as smooth as possible to the end, because otherwise maybe people work 10 hours on Monday, 10 hours on Tuesday, and then they start working 6 hours and 6 hours, etc.
Michel.
Yes.
Quick question. So this is really focused on tasks, but
yes.
When you manage a project, there's multiple tasks within a project.
Yes.
So, how does all of those tasks relate to a project?
So that's where the project view comes in. So let's say so what we do is every task gets, in our case, assigned to a country, because we do it for a country, or for Europe as a whole. That's usually the reporting setup, or tool setup. We tag it to a type of task, so it's, in this case, development. Sometimes it is content, sometimes it is some technical analysis. And you also tag it with the project that it's associated to. And technically, it should only be associated to one project, always. So we always have four tags. This allows you to have when you're in the tool and you really want to know, okay, how do I want to prioritize my backlog? Maybe you've gotten, maybe Brian comes to me and Brian says to me, okay, Michel, from now on, the only thing I want you to do is Italy. Fine. And I just look at the country Italy. What are all the tasks that I have still open that are in the backlog for Italy? And what are, for Italy, the most important projects to start scoring for SEO in this case? Then I will just prioritize them very high in the backlog. In the sprint call, I will tell the team what is the story, why we're doing this, we discuss it, and then everything that makes sense then actually goes in. It also means that if a new project starts, it allows you as a product owner, or let's say Desmond is going to own the project, to really start thinking about, okay, what are all the things that we have to probably do, and you won't know everything at the beginning, right? But you will know what you need to do to get started. and then it'll become more and more and more. And sometimes you just want to, you think about it from a backlog perspective. You're like in a call and you're like, oh yeah, we talked about this project. We need to add this to it as well. You just put it in the backlog to tag it as the project that it is in, and then it also pops up into that project. And so it helps you to get that, holistic 360 view, whatever term you want to put to it, on the whole everything. I can go into a country and say, okay, hey, these are the amount of tasks that we have still open for you. So if you actually want to add, if you want to add more resources, then fine. This is all the things that this person will be able to work on. We can go at it from a project base. Let's say a hierarchy overhaul has to go and be planned. We can copy that project, go into the next one, and replace everything to the new country, because you can just copy and paste all the tasks that you've gone through if you have to mimic that project again. And it saves also, that's like the best win that we had probably, because we had to do the hierarchy overhaul multiple times. And every time we did it, we kind of changed it slightly, but it stays for like 90 to 95% the same. And you really, you don't have to do the estimations anymore. You know what the effort is going to be. You know all the tasks that you have to go through. You know who did it the last time, so he or she can probably do it again. And then it just moves into the sprint whenever it needs to go in there. Technically, you don't have to work on, at least for me and our team, the case was it's usually not the case that you work on one project, you finish it, then you go to the next project, etc. You're probably involved in multiple projects at the same time. And this is a really good way to manage that. But it's really important that you have one product owner who can steer it, that has the vision, that talks to the business, that knows, okay, this is what we need to prioritize, and then you figure out as a team how to get that done. You can add files and everything to this, and then in here, what you maybe see is you can have like some communication going on. So let's see which one is done. I don't think we talked about this one, but you get some history of everything that happened. We created it, so we tagged it, or we updated the description, we moved it into the sprint, and then we completed it. And in a lot of cases, there's actually some communication going on here. Like Sticky is delivering a research, they would always explain what they, like in short, what the analysis was. And then they have some files that I can then open and then see the long-term, like the in-depth analysis and exercise I would present to the business. But it also means that as soon as they delivered it, I will have a really quick view of, okay, these are the main points. So if somebody calls me, or if I happen to be in a conversation with Zoab maybe in the UK, at least I can already give some insights. And it really helps me also to be fast as a product owner about many things that are going on at the same time without actually knowing the in-depth stuff that's going on. So it does help that I'm a specialist myself as well, right? So it does absolutely help that the project that you're involved in and the ones that you're managing, that you actually also know how it works. Technically, it also allows you to be a product owner of something that you don't really know in depth yet, but you can figure that out as you go, because you can rely on your team massively to help you to get all of this done. You'll be just a switch between the team and the business or the customer in development cases. And what then happens is the team doesn't have to worry about all the communication and about all the questions, because they can always say, fuck the product owner, I don't feel like this. Oh, sorry, I'm blocked. I have this sprint completely full, completely booked. If you want something in, if it's really that important, talk to Michelle. And then it's up to me to say to them, like, fine, I can do this for you, but it's going to cost you the delivery of this. And then all of a sudden, it's not up to me. It's like, I'm here to help the customers, the local business units, to get better SEO results. They trust me and my team that we are specialists, that we're good at this. If they think that we should prioritize something else, fine. But then at least I can explain them that it'll go to something else, because I can't magically create 5 hours extra for my team to work on. It's just full at some point. And that kind of makes a really nice conversation, because then they know, they understand it, and it's like, in 2 weeks is also fine, because usually you can prioritize it then in the next sprint or the sprint after. So especially those 4 angles, they make it very, very handy to work like this and to keep an overview of everything that's going on. And, because you have 10 countries, and here are all the projects that are going on at the same time. And they're all quite big. And some of them let's say, the hierarchy overhaul, that there is like projects within the project going on, right? You have the content angle, you have the technical angle, testing stuff. So things can, all the Genesis stuff that we've gathered over the last 2.5 years. So it helps you really to manage things. Yes.
Do you have a Scrum Master in your team, or do you split it into roles?
Yeah. So like we're not doing it officially as a company, right? But it's also with 5 FTEs quite manageable to do it within yourself if everybody just understands what you're doing. Scrum Master is just sitting there to make sure that you're actually doing your appointing system in the right way. The Scrum Master really makes sure that you keep it to 2 hours the meeting, and we sometimes take half an hour extra because we know. And sometimes we take half an hour less, and in our case, we don't really need a Scrum Master. But if you do it as an organization, it makes a lot of sense to have a Scrum Master because they keep consistency between the teams. They make sure that you don't overdo your time. They make sure that everybody speaks the same language all the time. And then, because you can imagine that if everybody works on a 2-week cycle and delivers, that it's much easier to also say, okay, I'm working on it in this sprint, or I'm working on it in the next sprint. Then you automatically know that they will, in 95% of the cases, actually deliver, so that you can already plan it for the sprint after, or put it on your backlog, knowing that it is roughly going to be in 4 weeks from now that you can work on that area. So Scrum Master really is like the orchestrator between like many teams. Yeah. But it's a very important one actually. Otherwise, everybody's just kind of like slowly drifting off, but then having really big gaps at certain points. This is our core, our dashboard, our everything. Especially the communication about the tasks in the tasks is super helpful because normally we go via email before this, and you just keep forgetting things. You have 5 threads about the same thing, or stuff starts to run through each other. Whereas in here, even if we park something within a project and we come back to it 3 or 4 months later, we just read through it a little bit and we know exactly how we left it off. We have a little bit of an inbox, and that's it. It's in the end something you have to set up for yourself. This is not a framework that Wright gives you. This is something that I created on the back of the Scrum methodology. You can do it different if you want to. But yeah, it's really helpful. I'll quickly show you then to do it, but this is more like personal planning. You can do this however you want to do, but it really nicely integrates with stuff like Wrike and Toggle. So you can get the tasks from a Wrike point of view very easily in here. You add some of your meetings in here as well. I kind of tend to plan the day, and then as soon as I start something, I just start a timer, and then this is when Toggle starts to track things, and then you also keep a record of everything that you've been working on. So this doesn't make any sense from this point of view, but when you look at the reports and you have a whole team around you, you really get to see how much time did we spend this week, or how did it look last week. Sticky Eyes doesn't report into this, it's just Edmund and me, so it's going to be quite static all the time. But at least we know we spent 80 hours and 21 minutes last week. These are most of the projects that we've been working on. The biggest project we've been working on was a strategic session. And if I really wanted to know more about it, you can just open it up and go to a detailed report, and you get also, in this case, no description. Great. But then, because you make some of the notes in here, create presentation deck, and it just literally takes it from here. But this I just do once a month. Maybe I go in here and I just look back at, okay, what did the last month kind of look like? How did we spend our time? And because in here, I tag things as getting things done, meeting, I can, in the report, really zoom in. Did I spend a lot of my time on meetings or on getting things done? Or did my team spend most of the time on getting things done or on meetings? And if it is mostly on meetings, then we have a conversation like, how can we decline this? How can we get this to go lower? Right? And yeah. So that really, why did we have so many meetings in the last month? Or do we? And even if you look at it for longer periods of time, you can really look at, do we actually see a decline in the amount of hours that we spend on meetings? It really helps you to manage to manage everything. And if you do it, at some point you'll get year-over-year information. You see that we don't work in the weekends. But again, you really get a nice overview of where are you spending your times on as a team, and what has it actually been that you're spending your time on, if you wanted to know. And it's not like I go in here and I'm going to say to Desmond, hey, wait a minute, you worked 7 hours and 34 minutes on Friday. What happened there? You don't treat it like that. You got to be sport. Sometimes you work 8 hours and 5 minutes a day. You're not going to ask him why he overworked for 5 minutes, right? So you don't do this to control each other, but you do it to optimize your workflow in the end. And you do that as a team manager, and Desmond does it himself sometimes as well. He just looks at it and then he asks, hey, this is what I noticed. How can we optimize this? Could you help me with this? You also enable your team to use data to optimize your efficiency. And that's how you can really connect all of this stuff together. But I can tell you, if I did not have and if I did not have Scrum methodology to manage all of the SEO work, we would by far not be as efficient as that we are now. It would be a disaster managing so many countries, let alone 40 projects that are continuously going on. And life would look very different.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah. Sorry, can you repeat it?
At Toggle.
Toggle, yeah.
You have one account and you share that with the team so that you can take a look at their data as well.
No, you create. Desmond has his own account, but we're in the same team, so you could even be part of multiple teams if you wanted to. And then I can quickly show it, and then I'm gonna finish everything. I'm done in like 2 minutes. I'm just gonna show this.
Coffee cup is the question.
Where is it? In here. So you can do it manually, but I prefer to just plan the day and then just take it from there, because it automatically takes care of this. And then at the end of the day, so this is more like personal time management, but I take half an hour at the beginning of the day to plan my day, and I take half an hour at the end of the day to stop the day. And I usually do that in the bus, which really helps me to, as soon as I get to the office, I know what to do. As soon as I get out of the office, and I kind of know if the day was successful. And I sometimes need to update some times here, but it's super easy. This tool is free, actually, and Todoist is also free. Works very fine if you use it for free. For 30 euros a year, you get the pro account, and you get a nice fancy black background. I like black backgrounds, actually, so for me it was worth it. Easier on the eyes. You just type in here what you want to do, and then you select the project that it's part of. You can select the client that it's part of, and then sometimes, I don't think Desmond can see this one, don't think Desmond can see this one. So you can really set things, separate things from each other. If you work for yourself, right, you can separate from different clients and the different projects that you have. And then if you do this one in a pro account, you can add base dollars per hour, and then it will also automatically calculate your earnings and all that stuff, what you're doing. And you could automatically send this to your customers. So technically you could even do it within, if you wanted to, within Staples, and show it also to the business units. Like if I was an agency and I would have asked like 80 or 100 euros an hour, this is the amount cost that you save by working with us here. Yeah.
What if you are working on a project and your time is on, and then somebody comes to you talking about another project?
Yeah, I'm not going that far. That's like, you take things in blocks, right? If you're going to, I'm not Elon Musk. I don't manage my time by minutes, right? If I don't think it's worth that much yet. But so I manage my time in blocks of 30 minutes, more or less. If somebody comes to me and it has to be a conversation for 20 minutes, then I'll probably change it, but sometimes I just don't. In the long term, this gives you a really nice overview of everything. If 80% of this is correct, sometimes we don't fill it in because we simply forget. We have busy days and a lot of meetings, and you have to do it all in backwards, then it's not worth the effort to do that. But if you're just planning your day anyway, and you can, with a Chrome plugin, or in this case, Opera plugin, easily connect it with the other tool, then it just helps you to not only have a view of what my team is going to work on, what my team is working on, what I want to do today, what maybe my day tomorrow roughly will look like, but also on what have I done and where have I spent my time on, and where has my team spent its time on.
Add to the answer is also Michel is not at his desk, so actually you can't really bother him. So he's really focusing on his task.
I'm going to shut it off now.
Yeah. So thank you everybody from joining. Don't leave yet, people in the country. So we are finished in terms of time. But if you have questions, Michel and I believe a lot of people in the room could stay here to ask questions and listen to the answers. So we still allow you this time if you have it. If you don't, you can send your questions by emails to me, Sarah Potier, so the one who sent the invitation, and your question will be answered later on by email. But if you want to ask questions now, please feel free to do so.